This is Golf with Jay Delsing. A two-time college All-American at UCLA. A participant in nearly 700 PGA Tour events. 7 professional wins to his credit. Over 30 years of professional golf experience. A member of the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame. This is Golf with Jay Delsing.
Good morning, this is Golf with Jay Delsing. I'm your host, Jay. I got Pearlie with me. Pearlie, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Jay. Happy Thanksgiving and looking forward to Christmas and doing the show this morning. Let's put it that way.
Right on. So, guys, I apologize a little bit for my voice here. I had a great trip with my grandkids, and I think I picked up a little something from Alabama. But anyway, we're glad to be with you. We formatted the show like a round of golf. The opening segment is the On the Range segment. It's brought to you by the Gateway section of the PGA. We so appreciate their support here on the show. I need to say this, and I've really been bad. I want to say that the Golf with Jay Delsing show is brought to you by, and our title sponsor is Daugherty Business Solutions. We really appreciate Daugherty. We're doing a lot of fun things together. They are a community powerhouse, and we so appreciate their support. But like we said, we're on the Range segment. One of the things that we do here is we give away golf balls. So they're tailor-made TP5 golf balls from our buddy Jeff Thornhill. So send me an email, jay@jdelsinggolf.com, and you will be entered. This is week 49, and we have sent out 48 dozen golf balls this year, and it's pretty cool, getting a lot of really fun fan mail. My mailbag is completely full with questions and things like that, so if we have time today, we can try to get to those. Pearl, let's just jump into the show. Got a repeat visitor on the show, Ed Wheatley, who is a true blue, fully encompassed St. Louis, and he's got a new book out, and it's really, really a fun read. And it's called St. Louis Sports Memories. It's Ed's 5th book, and I had no idea about most of the things in that book, John.
Well, I'll tell you what I noticed with the interview, which was just great. I haven't met too many people that are more fired up about St. Louis than you are, but I think he might have the edge on me.
Oh, no, there's no question about that. There's no question.
He's dug into the details, and what fun stories and what fun information. It made me think about a lot of different things because, there's only so much information that gets through to the public, if you will, or through to the general masses. And you and I know behind the scenes how different things actually are than sometimes what seeps through and becomes the story. So this is a book about that, but with just great detail and interest. I just loved it. I started looking up some of the names you guys were throwing around after I was listening to the interview, and just a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've really, really enjoyed it. But so we're going to talk and break that down a little bit after his interview. Lydia Ko won the CME Championship, the Tour Championship on the LPGA last week, and overtook Nelly Korda, kind of our favorite LPGA player on the Golf with Jay Delsing show, as world number 1. And what an incredible and an impressive win for her. She won $2 million that week, John, largest purse on the LPGA Tour. Had a killer year, almost set the yearly earnings record by a few $100s behind Lorena Ochoa. And I sit there and I feel like Lydia Ko's 42 years old. She's been around forever. She's nearly qualified for the LPGA Hall of Fame. John, she's 25 years of age.
It's just amazing. That's amazing. And the fact that she had fallen quite a bit, and now she's coming back and taking on Nelly Korda, who in some ways to me looks like she's invincible out there with her game. And so it's so interesting to see the two battling it out. We have so much to look forward to in the future with those two.
Oh my gosh! I mean, there are so many good players, and it seems like every year, John, another 2 or 3 South Korean women that were not household names pop up and knock off a major or two. So the competition's great. Hats off to Lydia Ko, her perseverance and her game. It's interesting too, John. The contrast between Nelly Korda and Lydia Ko and the way they go about it and their abilities to do what they do, they're not really related.
I love that you brought that up. That's one of the beauties of the game is there's so many different ways to get it done, and they're showing it. I don't know enough about the distance between those two. How much distance is there? Do you know off the tee? Irons in general?
Quite a bit. I don't know exactly, but I could do some a deeper dive into Will next time because I think it's interesting for our peeps to check out and learn about, because in the men's game, it's all about power. It's all about power. If you're not over 300 yards off the tee, you're nowhere on the men's tour. That is not the case on the LPGA tour. There are women that are smashing it like Nelly, but Lydia Ko is not one of those. I'm not saying she's super, super short, but she goes about it in an entirely different way.
It's an amazing difference, just the whole approach physically, etc. But again, fun to watch, and one of the beauties of the game is that you can do it differently. So clearly, guys on the guys tour, sure they hit at different distances, but they go about playing quite differently too, at least some of them.
Absolutely. So, John, well, we could segue into Cameron Smith winning on his in his homeland. He won the Australian PGA. That is a tournament that qualifies for world golf ranking points. And you had an interesting take on this, Pro.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, we're still waiting with great anxiousness to see what's going to happen with the LIV players and the majors. And I'm just wondering if one of the ways they look at this is to say, well, if you're in the world rankings, like any year, you're going to be able to get into the majors. Well, as we know, the LIV events don't give world ranking points. However, if a guy steps out of LIV, goes and does like Cameron Smith did and wins, he wins quite a few world ranking points. And with what he had before, I'm assuming he would still be in that echelon to where he would get in. So I think that's quite interesting. Again, I don't know that it's going to go that way, but that would be one way that would be halfway reasonable. Just say, hey, if you've got the world ranking points, you get to play. But very few players are going to be able to do that. So it'll be kind of interesting to see who can maintain those points playing the LIV events and then trying to step out in other areas where they're allowed to play.
Well, John, it kind of defeats the purpose of LIV, however, because all the guys are talking about, I want to play less, I want to do this. Now they're going to be tripped.
So that went out the window a long time ago. We know it had nothing to do with playing less and being with their families. They want to go party, and they wanted a bunch of guaranteed money. So, let's call a spade on that one.
I like it. All right. Tiger Woods, unfortunately, Pearl, had to withdraw from his own tournament, the Hero World Challenge, down in the Bahamas this week.
I was down there several years ago with my wife, and what a beautiful place, and had a great time with Alberto Valenzuela, one of our good buddies from college, and he just treated us like royalty. And there's a lot of royalty down around that area relative to that whole thing. And what a tournament and what a setting. What a disappointment. Tiger's got to really be bummed out. I wanted to look for a bright side to this. And maybe it's part of his thought process, because December 15th through 18th is when we get to see him and Charlie, hopefully his son, play again in that father-son. I think it's the PNC, I think it's called, down in Florida. And that was a highlight for me to see that with his recovery from his accident, to be able to play with his son. And, he may or may not be competitive in the future on tour, but the fact that he can play with his son, hopefully for the rest of his life, is pretty special and fun to watch. And Tiger's a character at his own, but his son, other than a mini-me, has his own level of energy and showmanship.
No, there's no question. And I can't wait to watch the Charlie Woods story unfold, John, because like you said, are these things inbred in Tiger's children? I mean, his club flip, his mannerisms are they practicing this together? It's like synchronized golfing. They look so similar. And I'm really kind of bummed that Tiger didn't get to play in the Hero World Challenge, because I just love watching anything that he does. But to your point, the PNC is special. I spoke with Lee Trevino about that when he was in St. Louis for the Ascension Charity Classic. Still trying to get Lee on the show. Kind of giving me the Heisman a little bit, but he doesn't realize I'm going to stay after him. He's playing with his son Daniel down there, and Lee had the yips. And so Lee's been putting in the dark. John, he's doing all these fun little antidotes to try to get rid of the yips, but he said he's 82 years old. He said he's in the gym. He goes, my tees are going to be so far up. He goes, I'm going to dominate the tournament with my driver. And he drives it so straight. It's really, he is one of the true characters of the game, and he is not stopping anytime soon at 82 years of age.
Well, it's so funny that they move up and they're going to dominate and do this. These guys are competitive, and they don't, there's no ego lost in taking the quote competitive edge with moving the tees up and stuff like that. I wonder what's going to happen with Charlie this year. He drove it so well last year from the up tees. At what point are they going to move him back? My guess is Charlie's 10 to 20 yards longer this year than last year. If that's the case and they keep him in the up tees, there's going to be some howling going on.
Oh, no, there's no doubt. And, bro, what I'm interested in is, we've said this, one of the biggest fallouts from this year with Tiger and his inability to play on tour at any sort of regular basis was his putting. Yeah. And John, we know from experiences with me, from other tour players, you have to be thrown into the competition to get used to those nerves and all the things that go with that, and dealing with just the battle of the demons that you fight, every single competitive round of golf. So I'm going to be really plugged in to see how Tiger's putting rolls out, even if it's only in the PNC.
Yeah, I think that's going to be tougher and tougher as things go. He putted pretty well, if I remember, last year in the PNC. But yeah, you and I went back and forth many, many times with your game, and when there was layoffs or in between season and stuff like that. When you're not out there under the gun, it's just a completely different game. And I mean, we've seen that so many times. It's so fun to watch other athletes from other sports come out and play golf, and they're at home shooting 2, 3, 4, 5 under par, and in one of these tournaments or a secondary event or a pro-am, and all of a sudden they can't break 80. It's just a different game when the light goes off.
John, remember you and I were traveling to Australia and New Zealand to play a couple events, and I flew out to Arizona and played a mini tour event before, 2 mini tour events before, to just try to get a couple of reps under my belt.
I think it's huge. I used to try to do that in college when we'd have too much time in between events, and I needed to go play. And I know the coach got upset with me, but I'm like, I can't not play for a month or month and a half and then expect to go out there and not have nerves just firing all over the place. So I need that. I think there's other ways to do it a little bit, but nothing really like a tournament. You can't really simulate a tournament.
No.
Unless compared to actually being in one.
Absolutely. Bro, that's going to wrap up the underwriting segment. Let me do the tip of the cap. The tip of the cap is brought to you by our friends at Dean Team Volkswagen of Kirkwood and our buddy Colin Burt. 314-966-0303. Our tip of the cap today goes out to all the caregivers, the nurturers, the nurses, the doctors, all of the folks that devote their time, their life for caring for and looking after those among us that are in need. We lost our dear friend Jay Randolph Jr. Just a week or so ago, and we know that there are some of these angels, I'll say, walking among us that do a job that is just not easy and so important with the energy and the love that they show. And so we are tipping our cap to those folks today. And we appreciate the Dean Team Volkswagen of Kirkwood for supporting and for sponsoring the tip of the cap segment. If you need any sort of vehicle, give me a call. Send me an email, j@jdelsingolf.com. Spell J out on both ends of that. And I'll introduce you personally to Colin. But his number is 314-966-0303. That's going to wrap up the On the Range segment. Don't go anywhere. We have our interview with Ed Wheatley. This is Golf with Jay Delsing. I love having Doherty Business Solutions as the title sponsor of the Golf with Jay Delsing show. You already know that they're the #1 largest IT consulting firm and the largest software developer in the St. Louis region. You also know that there are over 2,500 Doherty teammates in 30 states and 3 countries around the world. But what you may not be aware of is what Doherty Business Solutions does right here in our own community. They were the sponsor for the first Advocate PGA event at Glen Echo this past September. Doherty Business Solutions was also a presenting sponsor of the Ascension Charity Classic. They have created Access Point, which builds diversity in the IT workforce. This is a game changer in our community. Literally, hundreds of mostly young African-American women are getting $50,000 to $60,000 per year jobs right out of high school, and that training begins in high school. Daugherty Business Solutions believes talent is equally distributed, but access to that opportunity is not. Ron Daugherty, our founder at Daugherty Business Solutions, is the chair of the 2023 Heart Ball, supporting the local American Heart Association Foundation. These are just a few examples of the positive things Daugherty Business Solutions is doing right now in our community. How would you like access to 90 holes of golf? Well, that's what happens when you join at Whitmore Country Club. You get access to the Missouri Bluffs, the Links of Dardenne, and the Golf Club of Wentzville. And guess what? No cart fees included in that deal. There's no food and beverage minimums. There's no assessments. They have a 24-hour fitness center, 2 large pool complexes, 3 tennis courts. Year-round social calendar includes holiday parties, picnics, date nights, live music. They even have a kids club for your children and much, much more. There's junior golf, junior tennis, and swim teams available. This is a family-friendly atmosphere, and they have a wonderful staff. If you get out there, you got to poke your head in the golf shop and say hello to my friend Bummer. He is a terrific guy, and he will help you with your game and show you around. And don't forget, there are golf leagues, skins games, members tournaments, and couples events available all year round. Visit WhitmoreGolf.com. That's WhitmoreGolf.com.
You're listening to Golf with Jay Delsing. For golf tips, news on the latest equipment, and everything golf, log on to golfwithjdelsing.com. The front 9 is coming up.
After my knee replacement, I was able to swing the golf club again without any pain. SSM Health Physical Therapy guided me through the rehab process, and when I was ready, one of their specially trained K-Vest certified physical therapists put me on the 3D motion capture system. It was awesome. They evaluated my posture, alignment, and the efficiencies of my swing. They gave me golf-specific exercises to help make my swing more efficient and repeatable. Call 800-518-1626. Tell them Jay sent you for special pricing. Your therapy, our passion. Folks, are you in the market for some additional protection for your ride? You need to call my friends at Vehicle Assurance. Their number is 866-341-9255. Sherry Fain is the owner and president, and she and her team are committed to helping you with your unexpected auto repair bills. They are committed to finding the right protection for you, your budget, and your family. They only work with the top vehicle service providers in the country. Get the protection and the peace of mind you deserve. That's Vehicle Assurance, 866-341-9255 for a free quote. 866-341-9255. Hey, good morning. This is Golf with Jay Delsing. I'm your host, Jay. I'm sitting down this morning with my buddy, Ed Wheatley. Ed, welcome and good morning.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. Last time we were talking a lot of St. Louis Browns and the Missouri Historical Society. This new book of yours, your 5th book, by the way, St. Louis Sports Memories, it's really, really got some incredible historical sports significance between almost every daggone sport out there and St. Louis.
Oh, yeah. I mean, St. Louis often gets its teeth kicked in because of our situation, social, political, whatever. That can change. And sports has been this one continuous factor throughout our history. And our greatness is really second to no other city in America. And that's what we really put. And, we were and we can be great again. And that's what I think this sports is the underlying thing throughout every society.
Ed, it's interesting because sports is the fabric that can connect us in a lot of different ways. I see it all the time in golf. It's just wonderful opportunities to get to spend time together with people that you don't really know, and then the game is just the facilitator.
Well, it is. I mean, you think back in 2018, people didn't know about golf or love it. They were all rooting for, Tiger and Koepka. Think about it just 2 months ago. The city, you turn people into friends by saying, do you think Pujols is going to get one tonight? Or did you see that one he hit? Strangers talk to strangers. sports brings them together.
It does. And such an equalizer. It's such a leveler of the field. And so, man, there's so much to unpack in your book. It's such a great read. It's called St. Louis Sports Memories. Again, I said it's the fifth book that Ed Wheatley has done. And so, Ed, we're talking about parts of the boxing scene. Remember back in the day when you were the heavyweight champ in the boxing world, you were the king.
You were the king. And many believe that one St. Louisan was the greatest boxer ever. And you think about, well, who was he? I always joke, buy the book. But no, mean, there are so many great boxers from St. Louis. I mean, the Spinks brothers and what they did in the Olympics and what they did then when they went into the ring and boxed as professionals. And, Sonny Liston, the man who was laying on the mat when Cassius Clay was screaming, "I am the greatest." But still, someone else is the best that there ever was.
You got to give it to us.
Henry Armstrong. The only man to hold 3 titles at the same time.
That's just incredible. Unthinkable.
It
in
is.
Today's world, and impossible. Relatively impossible. So, but we also have the St. Louis Hawks. We've got an incredibly rich tennis history with Arthur Ashe. I mean, let's talk about that for a minute. You mentioned in the book where Arthur Ashe at the time was dealing with this racial barriers and wasn't allowed to play in Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah.
And so where does he go to play?
St. Louis, of all places. You think about that. St. Louis wasn't the most opening and affirming town in the 60s, but he came here because this was the hub of tennis greatness. We had, Jimmy Connors. We had, the Golden Girls of tennis. We had, multiple with Chuck McKinley, Buck Buchholz. They were all there at the Armory playing. And today, we're starting to celebrate this rebirth of the Armory. This is where the tennis world was focused in the 50s and 60s. It made these men. They will tell you, every single one of them, I learned the special way to play at the Armory. But for a young boy who could not play against whites or indoors in the winter to come to any city in the country, and he came to St. Louis, and that's where he then went on to win Wimbledon and all the others.
Yeah, it's just amazing. We also have the history of the St. Louis Hawks.
Yeah.
This basketball championship and the trade with Bill Russell. I mean, let's talk about that just a little bit, Ed.
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, the Hawks weren't the first NBA team in St. Louis, and everybody goes, "What are you talking about?" Well, there was a team before them, and we had such a rich history. One of my favorite stories that leads up to the Hawks is because one of the men was in 1948. When the NIT was the big dance. The NCAA didn't have this big television parade that goes on for the March Madness. It was the NIT. And a little team from St. Louis University, went as David and beat Goliath, New York City University, in New York, of all places. And they did it with a team of all homegrown boys. Every person on that team, every player was from a St. Louis high school. You never see that again today.
No.
And they did it. And it was led by Ed McCauley, who then will work his way through the greatness of college and into the NBA and, was part of that Hawks team that you speak of. The Hawks would always fight for the Celtics for many of those years throughout the 50s for the title. And, McCauley was one of the big keys. And he was also one of the big keys is how he got here, as you mentioned a moment ago, the trade for Bill Russell. The Hawks had the draft number 2. They had drafted previously Bob Pettit, one of the greatest men in the game. And today he still holds many records today, and he's always picked on whether it's a 25-year greatest team, 50th year greatest team, 75th.
Always in that
always there.
Yeah.
And so is Bill Russell. And the next year when they had the second-round pick, they were going to take Bill Russell. But Rochester had it first pick. The Celtics, who wanted Russell bad because they had been in quite a few in a row title games and lost, Russell was going to be their meal ticket. The story of how they got Russell in this goes back to they made a deal with Rochester because the owners of the Celtics also own the Ice Capade, which was a really big deal in the 50s. And when we didn't have all the entertainment we did. So they get the Rochester not to take him. And they'll get all these top dates for the Ice Capades. So they don't take him. St. Louis is number 2 on the clock. They're going to take him. So the Celtics say, all right, we want Russell. we'll give you Ed McCauley, who had been one of their keys in their in the Celtics championship matches, and the rights to the next draft pick, which would be Cliff Hagan. So it's one of those things you look back. I mean, yeah, we got 2 Hall of Famers for one, but what would St. Louis be in the world of the NBA if they had Pettit and Russell side by side?
Right.
Oh, my God.
Cornerstones of many championship runs. We also need to talk a little bit about soccer. We have the World Cup going on at this moment, and St. Louis was really the hub of North American soccer for so long.
Oh, yeah, we were definitely the capital of soccer for North America, and some people like to argue we were the world capital of soccer, like we were the world capital of bowling, and, soccer was there, wrestling, today, chess. But, yeah, everybody knows, hopefully, remembers the famous 1950 World Cup story tied to St. Louis, where we had the Fab Four, from the Hill. 6 players from St. Louis actually went to that team, and that team was put together real quickly. They didn't have a long time to practice. They're going up against the great England team, which has still never beaten the United States, and they had been together for years. But it was these 4 boys from the Hill who had played their whole lives together. It wasn't like we had to learn anything new. They just played, and they defeated England.
And I think we had another St. Louisan starting on that team, didn't we?
Yeah.
I think we had 5 players.
There were 5 players that started.
World Cup.
The 6 didn't play, but the 5, but 4 were from the Hill. Yes,
and it's just really interesting to look at when, and we'll talk about this a little later in the interview. But golf's it's firmly entrenched in this as well. We've got the 47 Open at St. Louis Country Club, and that's a great story just in itself.
Well, yeah, I mean, with golf, people don't really realize, and we tell the story, how did golf get to St. Louis? And where did these country clubs start evolving that now blossom everywhere? And it was, call it the rich kids who went back east in the late 1800s and early 1900s. They took up this golf game, which was all over the East Coast, when they're up there at Harvard and Yale and Brown in those schools. And so when they come back home, they want to play. And that's what led to all these golf courses being built. And as the growth of St. Louis was pushing north, that's why they were all originally in the Normandy area, with Glen Echo and Bellerive and Normandy, Norwood.
Years old.
Yeah, they all
absolutely.
Are. People don't remember. They think of Bellerive out there in Town and Country. When anybody who went to school at University of Missouri St. Louis, that was the grounds for Bellerive Country Club.
Yeah, it's right on intertwined in the UMSL campus up there, and it's really interesting. We'll talk a little bit about some of those specifics. So, Ed, how long did it take you to write this book? Because this is what's so fun about this read to me, Ed, is short little snippets and hits, and it's really, really fun.
Well, it is. I mean, it started really kind of out of nowhere. What happened was I had just come out with Wrestling at the Chase, which I had written during the pandemic when, usually my genre is baseball, but a lot of those, like the Hall of Fame, the Negro League Baseball Museum, they were all closed. All the archives are furloughed. You couldn't get any contact. Someone had come and asked me, we've won a few awards on our coffee table books on baseball, and said, would you do a book on Wrestling at the Chase? And here's all the materials. I own it all, photos, background. So I did. So I'm signing books last fall, and somebody said, when are you going to do a book on bowling? Somebody said, we've got a lot of tennis players from St. Louis. And, I said, well, I don't know if they're a full book or a full story. And I started thinking, and I was joking with my publisher. I said, people don't know that St. Louis had 4 NFL teams. It had 4 Major League Baseball teams. The St. Louis Hawks, who you spoke about, they weren't the first NBA team. And today the Blues were not the first NHL team. And the people were always going, what are you talking about? And I tell them, St. Louis had the first female owner of a Major League Baseball team with Helen Britton, owned the Cardinals. But the St. Louis had the first female owner of an NFL team. She brought her team to St. Louis. And she had actually, would leave with a resume of having won an NFL title. And everybody goes, oh, yeah, Georgia.
No way.
You got to go read and find out who it is. And it's like, wow. I mean, these are these amazing nuggets. So it was like, How fast can you put that book together?
Right.
So
not fast is the answer, right?
It wasn't fast, but it was faster because I committed, and I did probably about 2 years of work in about 9 months.
So you have a heart for this stuff.
I do. I love the research.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So tell us a little bit about that, because this stuff can be extremely esoteric if you're not really, really loving it and into it, and I know you are.
Yeah, you come out with an outline of thoughts. I took the sports, the things I knew, the things I wanted to validate, and then every time you go into these things, you find these nuggets like, whoa, or wow. And, example I spoke of a minute ago. I probably would have thought Georgia was the first female owner of an NFL team until I did my investigation and found such, And I did not know that there were 4 NFL teams, but once I started looking and researching and how these other 2, everybody knows the Cardinals and the Rams, how'd these other 2 get here and what did they do? It was so interesting, but then it led into, we'll call them the minor sports, if you will. Probably one of the more minor sports, but is a St. Louis original, as the piece of commercial comes, is corkball.
Yeah.
And you think about people my age, your age, where we grew up, everywhere, churches, every bar around had a corkball cage.
Yeah.
And people's dads would always play corkball. It was, created here in St. Louis, taken all over the world by servicemen. I talked to Yogi Berra's family, how he taught the Yankees and had pictures of him teaching the Yankees how to play corkball in Yankee Stadium.
It's interesting because for folks that don't know, the corkball is about the size of a golf ball. But a baseball type with the stitching and everything. And then the bat's basically like a broom.
Broom handle.
Yeah.
And, it was everywhere. And, and it went off into tangents like bottle caps, fuzzball, Indian ball, but it all started here in St. Louis. And actually, Marquardt Sports was built all around corkball.
Yeah, it's just fascinating. This is Golf with Jay Delsing. I'm visiting with Ed Wheatley. We are going to take a break and come back with the second half of this interview. Don't go anywhere. Powers Insurance is a family-owned agency right here in St. Louis that specializes in providing personalized coverage for the client who has a lot going on. At Powers, they understand that you and your life do not fit in a simple box. So guess what? Neither should your insurance coverage. Go to powersinsurance.com or call 314-725-1414 and ask for Tim Davis. That's powersinsurance.com. Hey, this is Jay Delsing for SSM Health Physical Therapy. Our golf program has the same screening techniques and technology as the pros on the PGA Tour use. SSM Health Physical Therapy has the Titleist Performance Institute trained physical therapists that can perform the TPI screening on you, as well as use the K-Vest 3D motion capture system. Proper posture, alignment, etc. can help you keep your game right down the middle. We have 80 locations in the St. Louis area. Call 800-518-1626 or visit them on the web at ssmphysicaltherapy.com. Your therapy, our passion.
Good sportsmanship will be back in St. Louis with the return of PGA Tour champions at the 2023 Ascension Charity Classic presented by Emerson. This year, Patrick Harrington took the Champions Trophy, but the real winners were again local St. Louis charities. Together with our corporate sponsors and fans, we were able to donate over $1 million to those who need it most. Thank you, St. Louis, and join us at historic Norwood Hills Country Club September 5th through the 10th for the 3rd annual Ascension Charity Classic. Thank you, St. Louis.
Hi, this is Peter Jacobson, and you're listening to Golf with Jay Delsing.
I want to tell you about a family-owned and operated golf business that's been right here in St. Louis for over 40 years. I'm talking about Pro-Am Golf Center. That's right, Pro-Am Golf Center. I know you know the name, but I'm not sure you know what they really have to offer. They have everything a seasoned golfer like myself could need, all the way down to what a beginner would want. Pro-Am Golf Center has the lowest price in the area for custom club fitting. I just went and visited CJ. He is terrific. If you call them now, mention my name, Jay Delsing, you will receive a discount on that already low club fitting price. Their number is 314-647-8255. 8054. Ask for CJ, or you can visit them at proamgolfusa.com. That's proamgolfusa.com. Hey, welcome back. This is Golf with Jay Delsing. I'm your host, Jay. I am sitting down with my buddy, friend, Ed Wheatley. He's the author of the St. Louis Sports Memories book, his 5th book in publication. But before we get there, we want to thank Pro-Am Golf for sponsoring the Back Nine. And guys, just call, visit CJ, and get fitted. That's been we've kept a consistent message all year, and it will really, really help your game. All right, Ed. So we were talking about some of the minor sports. Let's touch on bowling a little bit, because we have the National Bowling Hall of Fame here, and we were definitely the bowling hub of this country.
Well, it was, we had several teams here. Most prominent team in all of bowling history was the Budweiser, sponsored by the brewery, but, Dick Weber, Don Carter, Ray Bluth, Tom Hennessy, Pat Fitzgerald. They were what it was all about. They had shattered a record that had stood since the 30s as far as pins in a game, and they did it down at the Florist Lanes. And, it caught the attention of the whole country. The interesting thing, that record they broke that had been set decades earlier was by the Herman Undertakers from North St. Louis. Then I found out as I was doing this, you talk about these aha moments, it was broken in about 2010 by a team from Detroit. But in the midst of the pandemic in 2020, another St. Louis team took and set that new record down at Concord Lanes, down in South County. So it's still here, and there's so much bowling. But if you remember, back in the 50s, when there wasn't a lot of other entertainment vehicles, bowling was big on television.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the biggest places it was out of was the Arena Bowl, right next to the arena. And every Saturday afternoon, there would be all this bowling, and it was led by Don Carter, Dick Weber. And the thing that was interesting, another one of those moments, Don Carter, of all the sports in the world, you would think about this in the early 60s. Who's the first man to get $1 million sports contract?
No way.
For advertising. Don Carter, a bowling ball.
That is
He got
amazing.
that. I mean, people don't realize that. That's how big it was. It's bigger. Him promoting a ball is bigger than Willie Mays promoting a glove or bat.
That doesn't make any sense to most of us, but I think that's so cool. One of the things I want to touch on, Ed, because I think the diversity of our communities, and we have different pockets of, Italian folks used to hang at the hill. We've got these pockets of different nationalities kind of spread throughout our region, like almost all cities do.
Correct.
Right? But what's really interesting to me is there's almost different sports associated with different folks.
Yeah.
And this gives a really fun, accurate representation of those people and kind of what their life was like back then.
Oh, it does. I kind of joke. I remember growing up, there were the Catholics and the publics. You've probably heard that. The Catholics played soccer, the publics played baseball and football. And, we talk about that ethnicity and how that's where the CYC came in. And it drove St. Louis to be, as we said earlier, the soccer capital of North America, if not the world. I mean, people forget that we were the tennis cup, named after Davis. It's one of the most coveted. We've got, the Singfield Cup, the chess, because we're the chess capital of the world. We got the Walker Cup in golf.
Yep.
People don't really know about that, but it's been around since the 20s, and it's named after George Herbert Walker, the president of the grandfather and great-grandfather of two presidents.
Right.
I mean, and we have the Herman Cup, which comes back to the soccer here, which is handed out every January at the Missouri Athletic Club. We are all these such diverse pieces, and they all have these tentacles to St. Louis.
It's wonderful, and it's also gosh, if we can get back somehow to these more of those roots, Ed, we can probably get over some ourselves a little bit and find a little peace out there. The Herman Cup, by the way, is the equivalent of the Heisman Trophy that they give
the
it
best
to
college soccer player.
Best college soccer player, yeah. So let's talk a little golf.
Yeah.
So this is exciting to me. So in 1947,
Correct.
U.S. Open, St. Louis Country Club, which is one of my favorite courses.
Right.
And Sam Snead is not in the conversation with one of the few career Grand Slams.
Right. Never got
and
one.
he had a hell of an opportunity. So what I know about this, Ed, is that Sam had a 2-stroke lead going into the 18th hole in regulation and made double bogey on 18 at St. Louis Country Club. And then for folks that aren't aware, in the U.S. Open, you have an 18-hole playoff. You don't just go out and start playing on 15 and figure this out. You're going the next day back to the hotel room, back to wherever, and do this whole thing over the course of 18 holes again. And when they get to the final hole, Ed, it was almost one of the most controversial things of the generation, especially in our game.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't matter anymore, but they've got these 2 putts. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, they lined up, and who's going to take the honors and who's going to go first. They're down on their knees with tape measures, and
it's Sam Snead and Lou Worsham,
right?
Yep.
Yeah, and Snead doesn't get the call and doesn't put it in and doesn't get what he always wanted and never got.
Never got the 4-time runner-up in the U.S. Open. And then you think, we're right back here in St. Louis the very next year, Norwood Hills Country Club for the PGA Championship.
Correct.
And another
Back-to-back.
another iconic champion.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's – you're going to find that throughout all the times the Open and the PGA come in. There's iconic champions. There's playoffs, Think about 2018, how exciting it was. It was that way in the late 40s. And in 65, same thing. And
It's so it shouldn't surprise folks. I mean, if you get into this book and you look at some of the history and talk about the historical perspectives and significances of what's going on in there, it's no doubt that when we do a Champions event at Norwood Hills, we're raising ungodly amounts of money and all of these things for charity because this city has been supporting the game and games forever.
Well, they have, and not only that, color TV, first time ever here, and before that in the 40s, the first televised, and so it just goes on and on. Whether it's the Open, the PGA, the Ryder Cup, they were all here in St. Louis.
What's interesting then is the Ryder Cup with the best players and the most recognizable names. Come to Old Warson in 1971 and play. And I've actually I had somebody give me a program.
Oh, wow.
From the 1971 Ryder Cup, and it was really just fascinating to page through that and look at all the ads that they sold for that.
Nicholas, Palmer, Lee Trevino, they were all there.
Yep.
At the height of their games.
At the height of their games. And some of the classic pictures, they have them up in Old Warson today. They're in these books. Mm-hmm. And there's some great photos in your book as well with Arnold and Jack.
Looking over the other shoulder, lining them up. Yeah.
Could you imagine if you get to tee it up in the Ryder Cup and most people don't know. The Ryder Cup was never a real competition back in the day. Great Britain and Ireland played the United States, and we whipped their ass every year.
Right.
We would, and that's one of the things that Jack Nicklaus will say. He's like, the Ryder Cup, because Jack has a very iffy record in the Ryder Cup, especially for someone with his stature. And he'll say, it was just kind of one of those things. We kind of mopped the floor with them. They were nice men. We competed against them. It didn't really matter. Well, they changed that format, Ed, back in the late 70s, I believe it was, included all of Europe.
Right.
So now Seve Ballesteros. And so Ballesteros and Bernard Langer were the driving forces for trying to get those guys to play in these international competitions because there was only one of them.
Right.
And so it's kind of neat to see how this whole thing, how St. Louis has a piece of that.
Well, not only that, I mean, the Ryder Cup was for men. People don't remember the Curtis Cup.
Right.
They don't pay attention, and we had some very good women players competing and winning in those Curtis Cups.
And we had a Curtis Cup. The most recent Curtis Cup was at St. Louis Country Club. So, I mean, the golf tradition here in St. Louis is alive and well. And then you had the St. Louis Classic, which was played up at Norwood Hills. And so
we got the President's Cup coming in 30. I mean, the world has realized golf is important in St. Louis. We may not be, Torrey Pines or Doral or those. All of a sudden, we've got one called Belle Reve where some of the most exciting matches have taken place.
Yeah, absolutely. And, from my perspective, hats off to Belle Reve for keeping us, when you take on an event, and I know this is a little off the book, but when you take on an event, the members are going to lose their course for at least 2 weeks, and the golf course and the grounds are going to get battered. Just with all the people nowadays, the production, like in 2018, the 100th anniversary of the PGA Championship, we blew out records. St. Louis blew out records over there, and with all of the media and all of the size and magnitude of it, that golf course gets destroyed. And hats off to Bell Reed because they're right back. We're getting the BMW Championship in 2026, and then the really fun thing about the President's Cup, other than the Ryder Cup in 71, but St. Louis had such a prominent international competition.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just there is this presence, this history that people just don't know about in all these sports. And, in golf, and it's the little things. I mean, one of my favorite stories was, Gary Player, he gets his Grand Slam here.
Right.
And then what's he do? He gives his winnings, which was $26,000, away to amateur golf, to cancer, who took care of his mother who had passed away from cancer.
That's right.
And then he gave it to his caddy, and he actually threw in another $1,000 of his own money to give the caddy more.
Isn't that something?
And people don't know that.
No.
I mean, it's just what a wonderful story, and it happened here in St. Louis.
Those stories with that sort of human thread can really bring this thing down to a level where people can relate, because most of the time folks can't.
Right. I mean, in their stories, too, you got to really rewrite over and over, think about it, because I don't want it to be a bad mark. And I'll use Bob Golby as an example.
Right.
I mean, he got the jacket. Right. He got the green jacket, won the Masters. And everybody knows he did. But how did he win the Masters? I tried to be positive because I don't want to think – in my mind, he would have won the next day. It was a playoff. It should have been a playoff. But DaVinci, he – signed the card.
Yep.
Tommy Aaron had put down the wrong number. He gets a penalty.
Yep.
And that one penalty point cost him the playoff. And it's not a slam on Golby. He was there. He was a great golfer. But it's part of that intrigue of these events in the history behind the scenes of golf and sports, and it happened here in St. Louis.
Yeah, and there's all those little things. So Bob passed away, unfortunately, earlier this year, and I was fortunate enough to get an invite to his celebration of life and got to hang out with Kyle and Kevin, and I saw a bunch of this memorabilia, and you would not believe Bob Golby got hate mail because people said you didn't earn the green jacket. He did nothing wrong.
He didn't.
Roberto DiVincenzo signed the wrong scorecard, as you said, with Tommy Aaron keeping the card for him. And he shot 66, by the way, on Sunday's round.
Yeah.
He did nothing wrong. And there was a letter in the Golby room over at St. Clair Country Club where they played, and the Haas's grew up and played. And it was from the President of the United States saying, "This is ridiculous. You won this championship fair and square. You didn't do." I mean, Bob really, really got beat up over this thing.
Right. And that's where, in a way, telling the story in the book, people will look at it a little differently.
Yeah, hopefully so. It's really well told in the book. Ed, gosh, anything else you want to talk about? First of all, where can we get this book? Where can we find it?
It's at every bookstore. You can get it online. You can get it on sportstales.org is my site. You can get it from Reedy Press, but it is available. It's one of these things, like I said, there's so much that you didn't know. From the St. Louis Hummers, all the girls playing out there in Valley Park, or the St. Louis Browns softball team at Coke Park, to all these secondary but the major sports. And the one thing that, I will say, every sport, we talked about soccer earlier. In soccer, think about, we had the Stars here, and then we had the Steamers and Ambush and all these secondary indoor soccer leagues. The one thing, whether it's all those soccer leagues that would come and fold, or it's baseball, blues, every time St. Louis was the leading attendance in those leagues or at the top. The St. Louis SLU hockey team, the college hockey team, still holds the record.
We used to go all the time.
Everybody went. It was the cheap
sisters would drag us
alternative.
down there, absolutely. And one of the things, folks, so you don't have to be a St. Louis Hawk to enjoy this book, a St. Louis Honk to enjoy this book, because you're going to see how the seeds that might have been planted in St. Louis spread out through the country.
Oh, absolutely.
And, you're talking about Bill Russell. And
Yes.
Bill Russell never played for the St. Louis Hawks. However, we had a say into how this whole thing went down.
You know, and the best way I could sum up the book was at the latter chapters is the St. Louis fans. And why do we have such great fans? We got the greatest baseball fans in America, and we've got, great hockey fans, soccer fans, maybe second to none also. It was the people who taught us the game, who gave us the game. I have a whole section on the different announcers. We talk about what Harry Carey, if you knew Harry Carey, if you ever talked to him in his biography, he talked about, there wasn't TV in those days, painting the picture.
Right.
You could I want you to sit on your patio or on your front porch. The pitcher comes in.
Yep.
Checks off the sign.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Toes the rubber.
Absolutely right.
Here's the windup. Here's the pitch. You learn the game. Dan Kelly,
the voice of hockey, NHL tonight.
He shoots, he scores, and that scores has 18 O's in it.
Right.
Drug out. Or,
right.
When the funniest one I put in there is, I was a little kid, and Dan Kelly, the Blues are skating left to right on your dial, and I'm like,
wait a minute, what?
Yeah. So they're all there, and we've got them now. Dan McLaughlin, Kerber, they're all there. They teach us the game.
Yeah.
We love it through them.
And here's what's interesting, especially when you bring up Danny Mac. We're in his studio, so I'm going to give him a shout-out because he teaches you how to respect the game by the respect he shows you in the way that he's describing it and the players.
And that's what I write about, and that is why we have the greatest fans. It's because the people who teach us the game and give it to us every day.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you for having me. I'm always glad to be here.
I want to summarize some of the fantastic things that Marcone, your hometown company that is the largest distributor of General Electric appliance parts in North America, has done this year. We started out with CEO Jim Sowers donating 2 service dogs to the wounded servicemen and women heroes in our country. We followed that up with a raffling of 2 suites at St. Louis Blues home games with Danny Mac and myself, and with all of those proceeds headed to the Backstoppers organization. Lastly, the Marcone First Responder, Military, Police, and Firefighters viewing deck at the Ascension Charity Classic was a huge success. So much so that this idea and model is being implemented at other PGA Tour Champions events. Thank you, Marcone, for your support, and thank you for your tireless giving in our community.
The Legends of Golf return to St. Louis in 2023. You won't want to miss one of the strongest fields in golf. Ernie Els, Steve Stricker, Bernard Longer, John Daly, and many more when they compete for the 2023 Ascension Charity Classic title, September 5th through the 10th at historic Norwood Hills Country Club. All proceeds benefit area charities. Together, we were able to donate over $1 million to those most in need last year. Visit AscensionCharityClassic.com.
I am proud to welcome the Gateway section of the PGA back to my show. Whether you're pulling into your favorite driving range, public golf course, or country club, there is an excellent chance that the staff there is part of the over 300 men and women PGA professionals at over 100 facilities that make up our Gateway section. I grew up watching so many of these fine men and women getting to the golf course at dawn, leaving at dusk, spending their entire day running events, giving lessons, and growing this great game. PGA Reach, Drive, Chip, and Putt, PGA Hope, and the fantastic PGA Junior League are a few of the examples of the programs run by these same PGA professionals. Go to gatewaypga.org to learn more, or to find your next PGA professional for your next lesson, go to pga.com. The Gateway PGA, growing the game we love.
Hello, friends. This is Jim Nance, and you are listening to Golf with my friend Jay Delsing.
I've been looking for over 3 years for the perfect place to be the official 19th hole of the Golf with Jay Delsing show, and the search is over. Please welcome the Loading Dock to the show. What a great place it is. It is located at the confluence of the Mississippi and Illinois rivers in beautiful Grafton, Illinois. Their patio is killer with seating for over 800, and every weekend the Loading Dock has the area's best live music. There's no reservations required. They have overnight lodging available, and they also have an ice skating rink in the winter months. And don't forget about the super cool Riverside Flea Market, which happens the fourth weekend of each month from April through October.
If you're into antiques and collectibles, you got to check it out. The Grafton Ferry runs directly from St. Charles County to within steps of our parking lot. Go check out the loading dock and say hello to my buddy Peter Allen. He is a great guy, good golfer, and a lover of the game. Call 618-556-7951 or visit them on the web at graftonloadingdock.com for more information on their live music schedule, the Riverside Flea Market, and more. The Loading Dock, the new official 19th hole of the Golf with Jay Delsing show. This is Golf with Jay Delsing. We're headed to the 19th hole. Thanks so much for joining us here. Pearl, one of the things that stuck out to me, I understand there are people around the country that are listening to our show, and it's not only St. Louis centric, but John, these St. Louis rooted stories have these long reaching tentacles throughout so many other parts of the country and the sports world in their little genres that I think everybody can pretty much relate to it.
I'm gonna challenge you a little bit here. You can push back. I think every city has those stories. You guys are so jacked up, and rightfully so. St. Louis does have a rich history, and it's great that you guys, like people like you and Ed, are so passionate about it to continue to keep it alive and share it. But every little town, every city's got the stories once you start digging into it. I think. But I appreciate your passion for St. Louis.
Well, John, one of the things that Ed was saying, he is an expert. I'm not. But one of the things he was saying is that a lot of the East Coast cities do have these rich histories in some, for example, like, say, a Negro League team or a basketball team before the NBA, they would play and they'd maybe barnstorm and come through town. But he said a lot of the Western cities, the Los Angeleses and things like that, they don't go back nearly as far as some of the St. Louis's, as far as some of the New York cities do, just because of their age and that they weren't old. I have no idea on the basis of that, but I thought it was very interesting.
I think it's super interesting, but I just think it's fun when people are passionate about it. You can go from little town in Southern Illinois where I live, and each one of them, if you spend enough time and get to know somebody, at some point somebody that's passionate is going to say, hey, this town's really special. You need to hear this. And you're thinking, I can do anything special in this little town. But you start digging into it, and there absolutely is. I also remember reading a story years ago about the opportunities that the different losing franchises had and the people they passed up on. And you guys referenced Bill Russell a little bit in your talk about, because of the choices and draft choices and who took who, how that affected so many people. And it's interesting when you kind of go look at the franchises in the different sports that don't play well, who they passed on through the years that could have made an immense difference. So all of that is just so fascinating. That's why I think his book's great. His passion behind it is so attractive to kind of want to dig into yourself. And then, like I said, I Googled Henry Armstrong after I heard you guys talk, just to learn a little bit more about him. And as I Googled and walked through that a little bit, man, he's got unbelievable money. There's obviously could be, I think there is a book, books and more information on him the further you dig and how he affected different things. And it's somebody that I follow sports. I never heard of him before. And he's absolutely fascinating, one of the all-time fascinating boxers.
Pearl, that's going to wrap up another show. Thanks for being with me today.
It goes too fast, Jay. It used to feel like it took forever to do a show. Now it's barely blinking to go through a show. I'm not sure what that means.
Is that a good thing?
I think it's a great thing. It's certainly fun. I can tell you that much. And it's more enjoyable and relaxing than it used to be when we first started.
Hopefully the folks think the same way. All right, that'll wrap it up. Hit 'em straight, St. Louis.
This has been Golf with Jay Delsing. To learn more about Jay and the services he can provide any golfer, visit jdelsinggolf.com. You'll see the latest in golf equipment, get tips from a PGA pro, and you'll learn more about the game of golf. That's jdelsinggolf.com.
Hey, do you like wine? Have you heard about the hottest new wine bar in St. Louis? It's called Wild Crush Wine Bar, and it's located in Town and Country on Clayton Road, just behind the Straubs. Have you ever experienced self-dispensing wine machines? Well, they are here. The only place in St. Louis and most of Missouri that you'll find them, and it's at Wild Crush. You can choose your size of pour, and Wild Crush will pour the freshest wine in the area for you. The organic argon gas system used at Wild Crush keeps this wine pristinely fresh for up to 60 days. So if you're tired of drinking wine that's been open for a few days, come into Wild Crush for the best and freshest wine selection in the area. Go to wildcrushstl.com and come have one with us.